Okay, so this thought has been kicking around in my head for a while, and I've been dying to discuss it. Which Battlestar is the best? If you stacked each of them up against one another, which one, if any, could you point at and say is categorically the best one? Or could you stack them up against each other at all? The simple answer that most people come to is the Mercury, because it looks the coolest, has the most guns, and is the biggest. Any further discussion is moot. But that's too simple. There are tons of weapons that seem incredible or groundbreaking or terrifying, but end up being less useful than a screen door on a submarine for one reason or another. So what happens when we stack up the various Battlestar designs with more criteria than just guns? Will the Jupiter, praise be its name and blessed be its holy wall of flak, reign supreme? Will the Mercury come out on top anyways because looking cool and having a metric boatload of guns is all you need to bludgeon your way to the top? Maybe the Minerva pulls up from an underdog position to sweep the competition with the mother of all glass cannon battle plans. Maybe the Valkyrie or the Orion will randomly kick down the door and prove that size doesn't matter. It does, but I want it to fill space, so they're here too. As for what I'm actually judging them on, it's not going to be raw stats, because that's a really easy way to come to an answer. Bigger number is win. Instead, I'm going to look at what they actually accomplished, how well they carried out their intended role, whether or not they were worth the investment put into them, and if things could have gone better with a different ship. This is all my opinion, of course, so feel free to disagree and argue in the comments, but it's my video and I'm God here, so disagree at your own risk. Before we begin though, brief introduction. Generic greetings and welcome to Science Insanity, a channel dedicated to exploring my love of sci-fi and professionally wasting your time while I discuss anything and everything that comes to my mind. I hope you enjoy your stay. And with that, let's begin, starting with the easiest to eliminate bottom of the barrel rejects. The Minerva, my most hated ship. I'm not even gonna hide it, this thing is garbage. It comes in near the bottom for the simple fact that it was, despite any battlefield successes it may have had, a colossal failure from design to production to battlefield effectiveness. It was essentially a testbed design. Different design principles, different ideas, different theory of how it would work. It's the battlecruiser of Battlestar design, and just like real-world battlecruisers, it consistently fell short. It didn't have the armor to properly hold down the main line of battle, and while it was fast, that mobility often meant it got isolated or exposed while trying to put it to use. Consistently, the Minerva just failed in its role of a fast, hard-hitting Battlestar-sized vessel. Even the core concept that it was meant for, chasing down lighter Cylon vessels and outrunning the bigger ones, didn't work. By the time the Minerva actually had a few hulls operational and out there, the Cylons had almost entirely swapped over to a fleet of base ships and heavy cruisers. And if the Fractured Alliance DLC is to be taken as canon, the only thing it actually ended up doing was killing other humans, since the rebels mostly used smaller frigates and destroyers. So the Minerva had speed it couldn't use, armor that wouldn't protect it, and firepower that wasn't high enough to justify it over any other more conventional Battlestar design. And it scored an own goal at that. In universe, the only positive thing about it was the shift in design style. The Minerva showed that a large forward prow could effectively shield the core and engine block without needing all the extra mass in the center that a Jupiter had. It also showed that arming the flight pods with main caliber guns effectively extended the flak screen in angles where the Battlestar could bring its full firepower to bear, and that's about it. The Minerva's only claim to fame was making people realize they could build a better ship. I honestly think it's hard to argue that most other Battlestars in its position wouldn't just be better, either because it would be cheaper to field or it would do the job more effectively. D tier, the Minerva gets a participation trophy. Thanks for showing up and padding the video runtime. Me and all my homies hate the Minerva. I will not explain my irrational distaste of this thing. Now let's move on to the half pints, and we've got three to cover. The Osiris and its half-brother the Demeter, alongside the Valkyrie. The Valkyrie technically has an alternate variant with a big spoiler racing fin at the back, but that's a refit for all intents and purposes, so they're basically the same ship. If it wasn't given away by the order I'm going, most of these are also bad, but they do have some redeeming qualities in there that save them from the pits of F tier. The general term for these ships is half pints, since they're so small despite sharing the Battlestar name. Pocket Battlestar, that is. If you're less generous, or you get assigned to a frontline battle role, they're also known as one-way wonders, so you can already tell what kind of hell you're in for if you get assigned to this thing. Better make sure your duty station is very close to an escape pod. Let's start with the Valkyrie, shall we? Honestly, A terrible Battlestar, but an excellent ship for the role it was designed for. It was supposed to be an escort and fire support platform. Assigning a Battlestar to patrol colonial space, or escort civilian convoys and ships, or render emergency aid was a disgusting waste of resources. So during the later half of the First War, the Valkyrie was developed as a sort of patch to fill in the gap in colonial capabilities. It had some Battlestar-level artillery and carried a rather impressive complement of Vipers, and at least from in front and above, it was very well protected for its size. So it was essentially a baby Battlestar designed to operate alongside frigates, destroyers, and light cruisers during escort, or to form up in wolf packs of 2 to 4 ships or more, and then work alongside a true capital like a late-war Jupiter. This is the first ship that's actually good at its job, and frankly worth the effort that went into making it, since the Valkyrie proved to be vital in protecting colonial shipping and serving as a picket ship for larger Battlestars in bigger fleet operations. Essentially, the Valkyrie protecting a proper Battlestar meant that, like a Jupiter Mark II, could pile drive every single gun directly into the nearest toaster wagon wheel with glorious results. Unfortunately, this is a video about the best Battlestar, and with how small the Valkyrie is, it doesn't deserve that name. All the aspects of a Battlestar are there: heavy armor, big guns, flight pods, it's useful, it works, but it's just so small. My gut reaction is to give it like a B, because again, it was a good ship, just a really underwhelming Battlestar, probably shouldn't have had the name. But the CNP also exists, and pretty much every Valkyrie was refit with modern networked computers, which blows my mind, because did you learn nothing from the First War? I think the Valkyrie is top of the pile for these smaller pocket Battlestars, but it's going down to a C because it failed at the worst possible time, and it's hard to argue that literally any other ship except one would have done better in that situation and protected the colonies. The absolute worst of the half-pints, however, is the Demeter. For those who don't know, the Demeter was an unused but fleshed out ship from the Battlestar Galactica Blood and Chrome series and Battlestar Galactica Deadlock. It was the original version of the Osiris with a full center hull, expanded flight deck, more hangars, and 6 Battlestar artillery turrets on the back instead of the rows of missiles that you see on the Osiris. It was designed decades before the first Cylon War, but updated for use during the later half of it. That's why both the Osiris and the Demeter look like Frankenships, because they are. Bolted on flight deck, reworked hull to host more weapons, stealth systems, there's just a whole bunch of stuff that they added and tacked on last minute to try to make it work. The Demeter is one of those ships that reeks of desperation. Like most colonial ships nearing the end of the war, they were a desperate hodgepodge of whatever humanity could get working in time. The firing angles don't look like they'd be great, the ship looks incredibly fragile for what it is, and if we base its performance off of the Osiris, probably would have died very quickly, and despite the improved flight deck compared to the Osiris, it was still a small, cramped, miserable vessel to operate on. The Demeter seemed like a panic design, like someone in procurement said, we need more guns on the front line as cheap and as fast as possible, and we need them yesterday, sort of thing. It's highly questionable how well it would have performed, but in universe, when it was thrown into main lines of battle against the Cylons, well, you know, this was the ship that coined the one-way wonder term, so it probably earned that name for a reason. And despite being a pocket Battlestar by designation, it seems like it was really just used as a mobile artillery platform and little else. The Demeter gets an F. It's the equivalent of a tugboat with a bunch of missiles strapped onto it. Any other vessel that shares the Battlestar name probably would have done better than a Demeter. Pocket or no, the Battlestar name should not have been given to this thing. I'm also going to rip the band-aid off for the Osiris immediately and say C tier. Because here's the thing. The Osiris was even more shit at being a Battlestar than the Demeter was. It had stealth added on the front of it, stealth Battlestar, stealth gun brick, giant floating brick of guns, armor, and anger. Stealth, sure, okay. As if that makes it better. But the Osiris class was a recon and black ops ship. That was it. It was a more primitive version of colonial stealth tech that we'd see later on in things like the Stealth Viper prototype. Despite filling the Pocket Battlestar class, it is not at all worthy of that name. It was, however, an extremely effective ship. So effective that it was directly responsible for some of the biggest victories the Colonials had and enabling the actual survival to the end of the war and the armistice. It was very good at doing long-range scouting missions behind enemy lines without being detected, and that proficiency is what puts it so far above the Demeter. It was really important and really good at what it was supposed to do. Arguably, the Ghost Fleet offensive was only possible due to ships like the Osiris scouting out Cylon factories and shipyards on far-flung worlds to be targets of an attack like that. It wasn't infallible, of course, Cylon Dratus systems could detect it, but it did its job and provided invaluable intel to Colonial Command that decisively flipped the war from a guaranteed loss to a stalemate with a potential win condition to eventually being on the offensive and having the upper hand against the Toaster Menace. Before the armistice, that is. But it stripped almost all the main artillery from the ship in order to spam missiles. The entire point of a Battlestar is herder heavy armor, herder big guns, herder vipers, herder nuke to face wins. The Valkyrie had all three, but just not enough. The Demeter at least had the full weapons loadout, but the Osiris isn't even a proper warship. It's not supposed to be seen. If it's seen, something has gone very wrong. Like, why is this even here? I'll tell you why. Laziness on the part of the writers, and my sociopathic need to stretch the videos out longer than 20 minutes for some reason. This is one of those sci-fi aneurysm-inducing idiosyncrasies that make me want to rip my goddamn hair out. Because the term Battlestar has three meanings and nobody can decide on it. We have the original version, which is that Battlestar is the name for all these big warships the colonies have. It specifically refers to those ships from the 1978 BSG. Other warships, fighters, escorts, and more are not Battlestars, and several of them, like command ships and support cruisers, are mentioned in the extended universe but never actually seen on screen. Then we've got the RDM series, where Battlestar refers to the big capital ships, specifically the Jupiter and Mercury, with the Valkyrie tagging along as a half-pint stopgap. They're specifically a mix of extremely heavy armor, extremely heavy firepower, and lots of fighter carrying capacity to be its own self-contained battle fleet. Okay, that's fair. The RDM series had a way more fleshed out universe. We see other ships like Berserk cruisers docked at the Scorpio shipyards, and they're actually named as cruisers. Makes sense. They're like a third the size of a Jupiter, so obviously they're not the same class of ships. So Battlestars are the big lunkhead meme warship. Okay. Then we have the extended universe with Blood and Chrome and Caprica and Deadlock, and Battlestar is just a term that's thrown around willy-nilly as long as the ship meets three criteria. Has fighters, has guns, has armor. If you're riding a rowboat holding a rifle, piloting a drone, and stapling empty beer cans onto it, congratulations, your dinghy is now a Battlestar according to these criteria. That's why you see all of this garbage. The Artemis. No, this isn't the original Galactica. That comes later. This is the expanded universe RDM Battlestar design. The Artemis is old, being designed before the first Cylon War as the next step in colonial ship design, all the way back when the various colonies were still fighting each other and colonialism was alive and well. It had dramatically expanded networking and electronic systems, stuff that was not the most helpful when the Cylon Rebellion started, but it was meant to coordinate entire fleets by itself as a command ship, so makes sense. Nobody ever thought the Toasters would one day launch a revolution and start holding you at gunpoint. So the Artemis was designed with a lot of fleet coordinating equipment that also allowed it to launch and manage more Vipers than any other contemporary ship. Overall, the Artemis was a good, solid flagship design for a new type of starship. Its incredible armor, firepower, and flight groups meant that during the early years of the war, they held the line against the worst of the Cylons. Granted, they were phased out quickly due to their incredible vulnerability to hacking when their firewalls were breached, but they were everything that laid the groundwork for what would come later. A tier, very good showing. Now, the Mercury. I'm sure there are many people who would probably say S tier, S plus tier, but I'm gonna hit you with the mental flashbang of F minus. The absolute worst mistake humanity ever made. Something so garbage, it could be replaced by basically anything and they would do a better job. I can't wait to see the comments about this one. So, look, I said at the beginning that more guns equal win is a quite boring way of doing this, and unfortunately, when you use any other criteria besides the raw on-paper stats, the Mercury is awful by comparison to every other ship we've come up with so far. Sure, in a vacuum, it's objectively the greatest ship ever designed in the setting bar none by raw numbers, and the stuff we see the Pegasus do is amazing, don't get me wrong. But, to put this in perspective, imagine if an enemy could point a random garage door opener up into the air, click it a couple times, and then the entire American Air Force just falls out of the sky and explodes. That's the level of failure, that's the level of horrible design, that's the level of just batshit stupidity that was the Mercury. Every single one of them, except the Pegasus, died the moment they got into combat the first time, since they were all infected with the command navigation program. a program enabled by the infuriatingly networked computer system that ran the entire ship. Even if the CNP wasn't there, if the Cylons had any backdoor onto any Mercury, they just turned the whole goddamn thing off because every single system was linked together. It's a Cylon's wet dream. They infect the door control and all of a sudden they detonate the nuclear warheads aboard. It failed at the one thing it was supposed to do, which was defending the colonies. And it failed so badly because despite improving on every aspect that worked from the older designs, it entirely disregarded every lesson that humanity learned about how to fight the Cylons. If anything, the Mercury was a ship built to fight a different enemy in a different war, in a different setting than the Cylons of BSG. It's like they went 60, 50, however many years into the past back to the age of colonial infighting, and they were building a ship that would be the next generation of warfare back then. And it's not like there's any history to fall back on here. The Valkyrie got equally schwacked by the CNP, but all of those designs and stuff from the first Cylon War have long careers of successful service. Even if you count everything the Pegasus does during the entire series as we see it, it kicked a fraction of the ass the Galactica did during its life, and a pathetic amount compared to the Jupiter overall. The sum total of every single Mercury class was exploding in atomic fire and allowing the Cylons to exploit a massive weakness that killed 99.99% of every human alive. It's extremely hard to argue that this is not the greatest fail you could possibly have for any weapon system. I am not wrong nor exaggerating when I say that not only any other Battlestar, but any other warship that the Colonials had ever built would have been better than the Mercury. I can't even argue that it was a ship made in desperation like the Demeter, because it wasn't. The Mercury also ate pretty much all large-scale Colonial shipbuilding capacity and pushed other ships like the Jupiter and other first Cylon War era ships into mothball or reserve. It was every single egg in one very poorly made basket. F- to reiterate that. I cannot wait to see the absolute war going on over sci-fi's ship design darling. I feel like this ship class has gotten so much love despite the fact that it has done consistently so little. Next up, the Jupiter Mark I. The polar opposite. And do I really need to include this segment? Do I really need to go over the best Battlestar in all of history? Yes, the Jupiter Mark I is S tier. It's amazing. This is the Battlestar by which all others measure up and fall short. Not only was it the real bulwark against the Cylons during the early years of the war, the Jupiter spearheaded the most important offensive, the most vital defenses, and was constantly the deciding factor in the outcome of battles. They were also the pioneers of anti-Cylon ship design, removing networked computers in favor of incredibly efficient but highly isolated computer systems that meant Cylon cyber warfare couldn't affect them. And let's not forget, they are the perfect synergy of endless fighter spam, miles of armor, and face-melting levels of firepower. It was also the ship that saved mankind. While the Pegasus showed up later, and then exploded, the Galactica shepherded humanity from the first Cylon War through to its end, to the Holocaust of the colonies, to the final victory over the Cylons, and eventually home. The old girl put the weight of the human race on her shoulders and carried it with the blasé confidence of those mountain babushkas. I think it's hard to argue that the Jupiter isn't the best Battlestar. Okay, maybe I was wrong. S+. S+. The Jupiter refit is literally just the Jupiter, but more, but better, because not only is the Mark II possessing of every strength and quality the regular Mark I is, it's also boating so many guns it nearly ties the Mercury. You can look at this thing and literally see how they covered every square inch of the ship with guns. The engineer from TF2 had his way with it, clearly, because if gun wasn't working, use more gun. Truly, this is the gun brick. It was also the version of the Jupiter that participated in the Ghost Fleet offensive near the end of the war, doing so much damage to the Cylons that it was one of two contributing factors in them signing the armistice. The other being the Final Five showing up and offering to help the Cylons continue their trek of evolution. Just You know, backwards. S+. And finally, the original 1978 Galactica. I don't think these ships ever got a class designation like the remastered series gave them, but the original Battlestar that started it all gets an A. Originally, I was going to give it an S for pretty much the same reasons that the Jupiter Mark I got it. The original Galactica fought and suffered for some 500 years during the 1,000-Year War with the Cylons, a war that went on for so long that when she was originally laid down, the Galactica needed a bunch of observation chambers across it to chart the stars, Age of Sail style, to figure out where it was, and eventually moved into the modern timeline of high-powered lasers and computer systems that the Galactica served through. Though I will outright say I knocked it down a level because of the ending. The fact that the last episode, Hand of God, had them miss a transmission from Earth by literal seconds, only to miss the planet itself and continue their journey off into space. I hate it. I hate it so much I can't even begin to explain. You were right there. You were right there. You fumbled an inch before the finish line and face planted sideways into the dirt. I also refuse to believe that the second season existed. There was no second season. There was only the original episodes for the 1978 BSG run. There weren't flying motorcycles. These idiots did a Star Wars prequel 50 years early, and I refuse to acknowledge that it exists. But the fact that it was around for 500 years kicking ass does make a compelling argument for why it should go back into S tier. A ship that was so good it managed to hold on and hold the line for 1,000 years is insane. The skill and proficiency of these ships requiring not only incompetent leadership, but also a surprise attack under a flag of truce and a high-ranking traitor in order to overcome. There are a few ships conceptually that could possibly be better than that. At the end of the day, I don't think it measures up to the Jupiter because the Jupiter actually brought humanity home. It made it over the finish line. But I guess the OG Battlestar, in my mind, is a bit of a Schrodinger's ship. Like, it might be an A tier, it might be an S tier. My opinion is kind of flip-flopping back and forth even now, and I can't really come to a good conclusion on it. Whatever I say is the final answer. I'm probably going to write a comment contradicting myself once the video goes live, because that's just how close I think it is. It's like riding the line. And that functionally sums up the video. On screen is my tier list. If you disagree, feel free to explain down below and give me some reasons why. Or if you just want to tell me which one you'd like to captain, I would appreciate that as well. As much as I love the Mark II and would love to be just joyriding around that thing, firing off in every direction like a cowboy from the hip, I think I'd probably pick the Mark I just because, oh, that original white armored design from Deadlock has just, perfect chef's kiss. That's a sexy ship right there. So I'd probably end up commanding a Jupiter Mark I. But if you made it this far in the video, you're clearly the target audience, or were mildly entertained by it, so why not consider leaving a like, subscribe, comment down below, ring the bell button, all of that good stuff that helps the channel out against the YouTube algorithm and notifies you of future content whenever we release it. If you're feeling more generous and want to support the channel, we do have channel memberships where you can throw a few bucks at my Staying Alive fund and gain access to videos a day or two early, get to vote on content that gets made going forward, and very, very occasionally get some extra behind-the-scenes addendum, bonus content, stuff like that. If you just want to hang out, though, we have a Discord where we have community game nights every weekend, we shoot the shit with fellow turbo nerds, and generally just hang around enjoying science fiction together. And with that being said, a huge thanks to all the people already supporting the channel. The coffee vendors are greatly appreciated as you fuel my never-ending war on sleep. One day, I shall never sleep again. For the food merchants, making sure that starvation is an ever-far-away foe, I thank you as well. And to the arms dealers, you lot have gone above and beyond this time, because parked in my front lawn, having finally crushed the home of the HOA president that lives across the street, are a giant stack of Battlestars, and you could not have picked a better place to park them. So thank you very much for delivering unto me these glorious toys and removing one of my most hated foes in the process. These ships truly are the gift that just keeps giving. And with that, the video is functionally over. Outros are hard. I don't know what to say. Goodbye.